You can have a seat right here in the witness chair, please.
Yeah. Tell the jury who you are
I'm Sheldon McCutcheon,
and what do you do.
the Chief of Police for the City of Oxford.
How long have you been the chief of police for the city of Oxford?
5 years.
Okay. Prior to being chief of police here in Oxford, what did you do?
I served as Major of Operations from 2014 to 2019, and then I worked criminal investigations prior to that, and then prior to that, a DUI officer, patrol.
All with Oxford Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What were your duties as major of operations?
Overseeing large events. I was involved with the criminal investigations division, patrol, just really anything that dealt with the personnel staff of our department.
All right. And if you could, tell us how you became aware of the missing person of Jay Lee.
I was at church, and either received a call or a text message that the university was working a missing persons case, and that they were looking at some data that led them to believe there may have been some travel routes on Molly Bar Road in that area. So our patrol was going to check the area, just try to help them locate.
Would you make the decision about how your department was going to cooperate and assist UPD?
Yes, sir.
And what did you consider when you were informed by UPD about a university student being missing?
That we would do whatever they needed. We listened to them as far as what information they had, and then we just said, listen, wherever we can search, whatever we can do to help provide information, we'll do so.
All right. And as far as the resources that were used and the approach that OPD would in UPD, were you making those decisions?
Yes.
All right. Now, at some point, it goes from being a case being led by UPD to Oxford Police Department having jurisdiction.
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Yes. So it was on the 10th. We received a call that the university had been notified that the car was towed at Bandit Towing, which Bandit says, listen, we took it from Molly Bar Trails, and that's within the city limits. So we ran a priority at that point on the investigation.
If I could have this marked for ID.
Mr. Creekmore, you also have my notes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to hand you what's been marked for ID as Exhibit 107. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
These are our social media posts that we shared on Facebook and Twitter.
All right, Facebook, Twitter, anything that you shared on Facebook and Twitter, would it also go onto Instagram?
It would.
And if you could tell the jury about the social media notices that come from OPD, how does that work?
So anytime we're working a case, especially like a missing person, we want to get information out to the public. We want to share everything that we can possibly share. You know, our is this: there's 80 some odd police officers working 24 hours a day, can't see everything, so we won't buy in from our community. So we try to push that information out anytime that we can. We'll take that relevant information of what we know, share that with the community, and then as this investigation went on, we wanted to be very informative of what we were doing so that people, again, felt like they were connected to this case.
All right. And in that exhibit, does that accurately depict the social media posts that were shared by OPD?
Yes, sir.
All right. Your Honor, this time the state would ask it be received.
Any objections?
None, Your Honor. You're gonna ask a question before it's finished.
If you would look on page 1 of the exhibit 107, it's got looks like a turquoise or blue highlight. That wasn't part of the original post.
No, sir, those are my notes.
Okay, all right. But didn't have anything to do with the post that was sent out or shared by Oxford Police Department?
The blue highlight did not.
Okay.
I still don't have an objection, I just want to clarify that.
You do not?
I do not.
All right, go ahead.
All right, page 1, that first social media post, can you just tell when that occurred and what the content of that message was?
Yeah, so it's it's a post by the university, and then we shared that post as a missing person on July the 10th. So it's basically their post. We reposted, we reshared.
And then at that point, UPD had jurisdiction.
Yes, sir.
All right. Then on page 2, what is that?
Sir.
Describe the date
So
and the
page
time.
2, this is going to be July the 11th. So the night of July the 10th, we work with the university to decide this is going to be a joint investigation. So this post basically affirms that this is going to be a joint investigation between the University Police Department and the City of Oxford. And then we just shared, again, the relative information of what we knew at this time, and just to let the community know, hey, this is going to be something we work together on.
All right, and the next page.
This is July the 12th, and we're updating that Crime Stoppers is giving a reward, and then we're kind of just educating people on what we're doing. Again, same kind of similar format. It's a joint post together.
And the content is all about seeking what?
It's for locating information and to find Jay Lee.
Okay. And does it provide numbers for the public to call if they have a response?
Yes, sir. It shares, it's got our information on there, as well as our public information officer's email.
Okay. All right. The next post?
The next post is on July the 13th. This is a video of Mr. Lee sharing a story about his son and compelling the community to come forward and give information. This was a video that we shot with him speaking directly to our community.
All right. Next.
This post was shared July the 14th, and again, it's information about Crime Stoppers, but also another $5,000 for information leading to information for Jay Lee. And again, it's a little bit of an update of what we're doing and the information that we have on the new Crime Stoppers information.
So July 10th, July 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. Next.
The next post we made was July the 19th. Again, it's same format, another update for the community.
Okay. Now, were there any other on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
I don't believe so. I believe those were specifically involving this case.
All right, the remainder of the pages in that exhibit, are they the duplicates, for lack of a better word, that you would have shared on other media platforms?
Yes, sir. It's the same thing, but we just wanted to show what it looked like on Twitter. And I don't think we put Instagram in here. It's all the same. It just showed that each platform got the same content.
Now, we've heard testimony about Khalid Fears responding based on that request for information on those posts that were sent out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what day that was that you got that tip from Khalid Fears?
I believe that was on the 10th, but I feel like that came from the university.
Okay, 10th or 11th?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you receive any other tips?
We received a lot.
All right. If you could describe in general the amount of tips and what your call was in.
Yeah, so we knew going into this that we probably would get a lot of information. And so we set up a tip line and we took every tip and took it in and then sought it out. We chased every lead that we could. The tips were very important. And with any case, you get a lot of information. And we took everything with the information that we had, and then we chased that lead down until we could move on to the next.
All right. Was there any way to evaluate or assess the material value of a tip as it first came in?
In a situation where you've got a young person missing, you don't triage it, do you believe it? You take it for what it is and you go after it. We received tips from other states and we contacted law enforcement down. We didn't take it as I don't know if I can verify it. We went after every piece of information they gave us.
All right, and what was the response when the Khalid Fears called and gave information?
He was interviewed. We went and met with him.
All right. Now, at this point, at this stage of the investigation, when it went from UPD to OPD jurisdiction, can you describe what type of resources that you authorized to come to bear on the investigation at this point?
Everything we could get our hands on. All of our local law enforcement worked on this. We connected with state partners, federal partners, anybody that we could utilize that had a skill set, we brought them into this.
All right, and at the same time, were you aware of investigators gaining access to Jay Lee's social media accounts and
Yes, sir.
through UPD's efforts?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you able to get people that he would have been friends with or had contact with in and around that time?
We did, yes, sir.
All right, so you've got that information, you've got the tips. Can you evaluate all of that information, just in general, the people that had contact with Jay Lee, the names that you would have gotten from that information, as well as the tips? Let me finish the question. As well as the tips that came in comparison to the information that you found on Tim Herrington.
The information
Hold
we
on
got.
1 second.
I object to the form of that question.
I hate to ask you to repeat all of that anyway.
I can't.
I think I can answer.
I'm gonna allow him to ask the question anyway.
All right.
And we got it first, it's compound, first of all.
Let's break it up into little pieces.
What I'm asking, Chief McCutcheon, is to evaluate the names that were revealed as persons of interest, either from the social media tips that came in and the information that you found about friends and contacts with Jay Lee, compared to the other information that you got implicating Tim Herrington.
I object to the form of the assessment. Narrative.
It's not a narrative, it's a comparison of the quality of information on all the people that were persons of interest compared to Tim Herrington.
I'm gonna sustain the objection. I'm gonna break it up into two different questions anyway. Comparing the quality, talk about the quality of the one set of evidence and quality of the other set of evidence, but not comparing the two anyway, if that makes any sense.
All right. Did you keep a running list of persons of interest?
Yes, sir.
All right. You did personally?
Yes, sir.
All right. Where did you get that information?
From our investigators.
All right. And you've already testified that you tried to track down every tip that came in.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you do that?
We did.
All right. On each one of those persons of interest, were you ever to develop anything connecting them to Jay Lee, other than in relation to the morning of July the 8th, 2022?
We found no information of any of the leads that we tracked down of those persons of interest that gave any evidentiary value during the time of July 8th. And that's the way we were able to clear other people of interest.
All right. Now, you got a tip from Khalid Fears about Tim Herrington. What other evidence did you get after that point that would implicate Tim Herrington within that time period?
We had a volume of information that pointed to Tim Herrington. I think when we received,
We've hashed over all the evidence that see if you had, what are we trying to accomplish here? Doing the summary.
I think our last witness restated the evidence in this case anyway. I'm not going to go a second rehash anyway.
Understood. With respect to DNA, were you, as chief of police, the one that authorized the testing of any evidence that was tested in this case?
yes, sir.
And can you tell the jury why you would be the one that would say yes or no?
Well, I mean, one, it's got financial values, right? I mean, what does our budget look like? Where are we sending it to? What are the logistics involved around that? So I have to do that. That we value the weight of that evidence. In the case that we're working, we said send it all, and it was my authority to take everything that we received and to try to get it tested.
All right. Now, taking a look at Tim Herrington's apartment, did you send investigators down to try to obtain samples from Tim Herrington's apartment?
We did.
All right. And were some of those samples sent down to the lab to be tested?
Yes.
And it's scientific evidence. It requires professionals to do. There's going to be an expense associated with that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the time that those samples were obtained by law enforcement, did you have any concerns about the chances of finding anything of evidentiary value as a result?
Absolutely.
What were your concerns?
Time. I mean, 14 days. We can't predict who's come, who's gone, what's happened in there. The conditions have all changed over that period of time. That's a huge concern for us.
All right. And when you talk about time, what is that time range?
It was 14 days from the initial investigation beginning when a welfare concern started till July the 22nd when we knocked on Tim Herrington's door.
Were you in control of that crime scene from July 8th to July the 22nd?
No, sir.
Who was in control of that crime scene from July 8th to July 22nd?
Tim Herrington.
Rephrase the question.
Do you know who was in control of Tim Herrington's apartment from July 8th to July 22nd?
Tim Herrington.
Okay. Now, were you aware of, well, let me ask you this, what are some types of things that could be of concern if you're not in control of that crime scene?
Well, for not a,
What are some of the things that you'd be concerned about and we're not in control of?
I'm going to allow him to.
Question, narrative, asking for narrative
I'm
response.
going to allow him to ask that question.
I'm concerned about everything. There's no control when we are dispatched to a location for a crime. It's imperative that we lock it down as quick as possible. If you don't, every factor is important.
Specifically with respect to DNA, trace evidence, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. All of those things are going to be impacted.
All right, did you have, as part of your investigation, any heightened concerns about any of those factors based on the conversation between Tim Herrington and Jay Lee between 4 and 7/28 on July the 8th, 2022?
Yes. Jay Lee tells him that he left a sample on his floor and he needed to clean it up. That was an obvious statement made.
And what about that would concern you about the evidentiary value of any kind of biological evidence that may be in Tim Harrington's apartment?
That it's been cleaned.
Okay. Now then, the box truck, were you aware as part of the investigation that you authorized testing of samples taken from the box truck?
Yes, sir.
Were you concerned about whether any of those items gathered would have any evidentiary value for you?
Yes, we're very concerned.
Why?
Again, you have time. You have admission of multiple moves. We don't even know if the contents that were in the truck the day we recovered it was the same contents that was in the truck July 8th. That amount of time and that amount of people that had access to it and the multiple moves.
All right. And the time frame from July 8th to when samples were taken from the box truck, do you know that range?
The 24th or 26th, it was close to 3 weeks.
All right. I believe there were some moving blankets in the back of the box truck that were gathered.
Yes, sir.
Would you have had any way to know when those blankets were put in there?
No, sir.
All right. With respect to, who was in control of the box truck from July the 8th to July the 24th, 2022?
I'm not sure. We know that Tim had it on the 8th, but he had other partners who had access to it, and I believe it was Tyson King that we stopped the day that had the truck. So we know multiple people had the truck and had access to it.
All right, and then Tim Harrington's Ford Escape, were samples gathered out of that?
Yes, sir.
All right, do you know, are you familiar with the examination of the back of that vehicle?
A little bit to my knowledge, yes, sir.
All right, and what did you know about that played into your decision to have samples tested out of that?
They used a tactic that identified, and again, this is not my skill set, but they used a tactic to identify something that brought color out that led our investigators to believe there was presence of something there at some point. That was the reason that we chose to go ahead and do samples on that.
Now, with respect to Jay Lee's car, I believe there was an initial search for the contents, the credit cards, the cash, and then that was later sent to the crime lab.
Yes, sir.
To obtain samples for DNA testing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you authorized some testing of items or samples that were taken from Jay Lee's vehicle, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you have any concerns about whether there would be anything of any evidentiary value as a result of that DNA testing?
Yeah, I mean, we showed that Tim was in that car, and you know, again, we talk about transfer and DNA, so it's anytime elements have changed, you have to understand the changing of what's going to take place and what you can extract is going to be adjusted.
Is there anything else in the investigation or anything else that would have indicated you may not have been able to find anything of value in Jay Lee's car?
One of the things that concerned me was when we saw the video from Molly Bar Trails, You see Tim in a sweatshirt, but you also see some type of cloth material over his shoulders, which it looks like he's running in. And can that be placed on the steering wheel? Is that used to cover up fingerprints or any other trace? That was a big concern to us.
I don't understand exactly how we're getting to the point of asking a question about something and getting into.
I'm going to ask him, let him respond specifically to your questions. If you have a question about from item of voting or something, let him explain it from there, okay?
Thank you. Now, have you seen the video or reviewed the video of Jay Lee leaving Campus Walk Apartments 2 times
Yes, sir.
in July 8th, 2022?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who was in control of the key to his car and his cell phone at that time?
Jay Lee.
All right. Who would have been, do you have any proof as part of your investigation as to who was in control of the key to Jay Lee's car and his cell phone at 7:28 on July 8th, 2022?
Tim Herrington. We saw the video of, we saw the car, so Jay Lee's car driving, Jay Lee's phone is tracking with that car. We see the car going to Molly Bar Trails. We see Tim Herrington running out. All of that is exactly all in between 7:02-ish to 7:28. And at 7:28, there's no more access to Jay Lee's phone.
All right. Now, can you tell the jury how many agencies, law enforcement or otherwise, were involved in this investigation?
From local, state, and federal, I counted as easy as 27 to 30 that I saw actively involved in this case, from us to UPD to the Sheriff's Department, to, again, state partners and our federal partners that assisted with us.
And that's from every aspect, from tracking down leads, tips, ruling people out, to the testing of evidence.
Yes, sir.
Now, on July the 8th through July 11th, even up to the last social media post about asking the public for any information about Jay Lee, missing person, y'all, including other agencies, conducted searches of specific sites.
Yes, sir.
What was the purpose of those searches?
It was really just to leave no stone unturned. I mean, you get a tip in, or, when you start an investigation, you started from what evidence do you have? So we knew we had a car. We knew that car was at Molly Bar Trails. We knew where Jay Lee lived. We took those 3 starting points and then broadened our search from there. Again, as tips came in, we would run those down, but we looked in wooded areas, we looked in dumpsters, we knocked and talked on apartments, we canvassed everything that we could possibly canvass, and as the days went on, we would expand those to, what about the next apartment complex over? Or what about, again, if a park is nearby, if there's anything that would lead us to a probability, we searched all those areas.
All right. And if you could, speak to the jury about the difference between the terms search and rescue.
Search to me is what can you find? You're kind of looking for anything. At this point, we're kind of looking for a key that looks about twice the size of your thumb, right? So we're looking for that. We're looking for a cell phone. We're looking for Jay Lee. We're looking for any of the articles of clothing that he's reported in being seen in last. All those things are items of what you would look for on a search. When you get into search and rescue, you sometimes have an idea of an exact location or an exact proximity of what you're trying to gather. And so you go from search to rescue because you feel like you're getting something out of that.
All right. Now, the last searches that were conducted within the last 3 months, did you authorize those?
I did.
All right. did you inquire from the state whether that would have any effect on the trial?
Yes, sir.
All right. Were you aware that any of that information would have to be shared to the defense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Some of the areas that were searched, were they controlled by or near family members of the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Would those searches have been conducted, would be open and obvious?
Yes, sir. Broad daylight.
Now, those searches that were recent, what were you looking for?
Again, anything of evidentiary value. Your main priority is Jay Lee, but you're looking for anything that could give you evidence to point you in another direction, to continue giving you feedback.
And the main importance was Jay Lee. Why now? July that he went missing July 8th, 2022. Why are you still looking for Jay Lee's body?
We've been looking for Jay Lee's body for 2 years, and we're not going to stop till we find him. And I can guarantee you that.
Now, at this point, taking all of what you've learned from the investigation, at what point, taking all that into account, can you pinpoint, based on any proof that you have, the moment that Jay Lee was no longer a missing person, but a victim of a crime?
I think once we begin to gather enough information, you always.
Your Honor, now I'm responsible to the question, you're asking me to pinpoint times.
We'll give you a chance to try to pinpoint the time and then explain why you felt that way.
We didn't get to the point that we felt like we went from a welfare concern, missing person.
Your Honor, you need to answer the question, you pinpoint time when Jay Lee.
Go ahead and either rephrase the question or answer that question first.
Can you pinpoint a time based on your investigation when Jay Lee went from a missing person to a victim of a crime?
From the moment that we gave Tim Herring the opportunity to tell the truth and he couldn't, and he lied, and we backed that up, we knew then that it went from a missing person to a dead body.
And I want to be more specific about that. I'm looking for not when during the course of the investigation you believe that Jay Lee went from being a missing person to a victim of a crime, but now, at what point, what time frame would you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that you have proof that Jay Lee was a victim of a crime? Was that on July the 8th? And what time? Pinpoint the time.
So the timing is from 0600 to 728, from the time that we know Jay Lee's alive and he messages open to the time at 728 when his phone is done and there's no digital footprint of Jay Lee ever again.
Okay. And what proof would you point the jury to that would establish that he was no longer with us at that point?
During that timeline, I looked at, we've shown you motive. We've shown you that Jay Lee was lured over, that there was...
Hang on, there's objection.
Let,
Making a closing argument from the stand, Your Honor.
no, he's not.
Shit, we
hang
showed
on,
you.
hang on,
Ask for
hang on.
The question is, what proof do you have at that point in time, the time frame from 6 o'clock in the morning to 7:28, that Jay Lee was the victim of a crime, and he was beginning to say,
Ask him what happened between 6 o'clock in the morning and 7:28.
I want to make sure, my objection is, witness can't say what we've shown you, he had been sitting in his courtroom listening to the evidence.
I understand that. I'm gonna let him talk about, what evidence the Oxford Police Department has of what occurred between 6 o'clock in the morning and 7:28 in the morning on July the 8th.
So our evidence is motive. Tim Herrington didn't want to be out of being on the down low. He lured Jay Lee over to his apartment with an alternate Red Eye 24 account that even in Jay Lee's words, he's felt like he's being lured over. Jay Lee says, I'll come later tonight. Tim says, nope, gotta come now because I'm not gonna be here later tonight. That's a lie, because he was in Oxford later tonight. We have
hold on one second, Chief. He's being responsive to the question. The circumstances matter.
I'm gonna allow him to testify. Go ahead.
He had the blocked account. He says, Jay Lee says, I'll come over later tonight. Tim says, nope, gotta come now because I'm not gonna be here, which was a lie. He wasn't in Oxford that night. Jay Lee tells him he's coming, says open, while Tim is Googling how to strangle someone. Then 30 some odd minutes later, Tim leaves and goes to Walmart to get duct tape, then leaves and goes and gets a box truck, then comes back to his apartment, the last known location that we know Jay Lee was at. He then stages that car. We see him running out of Molly Bar trails.
This is completely inconsistent with the testimony that's been provided. Case here.
I'm going to ask that you not allow a narrative form, but you direct him at questioning what happened then, what happened then. Okay?
He's got personal knowledge of investigation.
I asked it instead of a narrative response, the response should be a question followed by an answer of what next, what happened next. Okay?
Yes, sir. And I will ask you this, all that you just told the jury, you have personal knowledge of.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He was present at the time of these events.
He's indicated he's been in charge, he has knowledge of the investigation.
Do you know from the investigation what significance July 8, 2022 had for Jay Lee and Stephanie Lee?
It was the day that their son was taken from him, and it was her birthday.
Were you aware of the type of relationship that Jay Lee had with his mother, Stephanie?
Yes, they talked.
What's
Were
wrong
you
with the
aware
question?
of the nature of the relationship that Jay Lee had
I'm gonna
with
let-
his mother,
I
Stephanie?
misunderstood the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, they were very close. They spoke all the time, multiple times a day, often.
And you were aware of what day it was for Stephanie Lee?
It's her birthday.
After 7:28, well, actually, after 6:03, well, let me ask you this. Do you know when the last message Jay Lee ever sent from his phone?
It was a message of open.
Do you know what time that was?
It was around 6:03 that morning.
At any point after that, were you aware of any other message that came from Jay Lee's phone?
No.
Course indulgence. Into the witness.
No, we We've been out here a while, let's take a look.
I'm sorry, if I may,
You may.
thank you.
You're
We were
under the
talking,
wire.
I'm sorry.
You got in under the wire anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. You were talking about pinpointing the time based on the investigation as to when Jay Lee was the victim of a crime. And that range was 6:03 to 7:28.
Yes, sir.
All right. At all times during that time frame, was Jay Lee and Tim Herrington, those events, did they all occur in Lafayette County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. State of Mississippi.
Yes, sir.
Tender the witness.
All right, we're gonna take a little break, go out there a while, we'll give you more instructions, don't talk about the case, don't anyone talk about the case with you, don't form or express any opinions, don't, investigate, don't look at any media posts. This case or more analysis to Odom versus State 383 Southern 3rd 322, where the defense was trying to introduce a report from the crime lab report without a witness from the crime lab. The witness who was questioned about this had many times, he said, I don't know what that means. I haven't seen that. Well, I may have seen the report, but I'm not aware of this, that. And I think that there's nothing precluding the defense from calling somebody. I'd probably let you call anybody, any of the crime labs involved in it that had some expertise, whether it be the state crime lab, scales lab, or anybody like that, to authenticate the document and give us some basis of how it was created and things like that. But I'm going to deny the admissions, and also in Odom versus State, this court stated, further it is noteworthy that despite this exclusion, the jury still heard testimony that in fact paint samples collected the victim's car and Odom's van and compared to each other. I think the jury, I've allowed, I think, extensive cross-examination on the fact that there had been no DNA, fingerprints, and things like that from at least 2 and maybe 3 witnesses. Juries have been allowed to hear this testimony. It's just whether or not the report is being introduced or not.
Your Honor, for the record, so we can be perfectly clear, it's not that this witness probably ought to step out while I make this argument.
Okay, won't you step out anyway?
It's not the fact that there's no DNA recovered in this case. That's not the evidence. The evidence so far is from Detective Baker, and he's identified in the report, DNA samples were recovered that don't implicate my client in certain areas. So that's, I think, needs to be cleared up in the record. We're going to go through with this witness. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot longer since he testified he wouldn't expect to find any DNA samples when, in fact, we've got all kind of DNA samples, DNA profiles located at various locations. So I want the record to be clear that it's not that we don't have DNA for Mr. Herrington, Jay Lee, and other individuals, other donors unidentified everywhere. It's just the fact that there's no DNA samples implicating my client in any areas he shouldn't be, and Jay Lee is in the areas he's supposed to be.
And I understand that, and I'm gonna let you cross-examine extensively on the report, the results of the report, what was asked for, what was sampled, but the report itself going to the jury.
I I understand.
is I'm gonna let you cross-examine the witnesses, but I'm not gonna let you introduce the report without a sponsoring witness.
And I will say that he mischaracterized the testimony from this witness. What he said was that he had concerns about the quality of the evidentiary value based on circumstances.
I wrote it down. He said, wouldn't expect to have any results.
The record will speak for itself. I'm not gonna pretend I know exactly what he back
I'll
there.
cross him and ask him clear it up, Your Honor, before I move forward in that line of question.
All right. But I'm gonna give you extensive latitude in cross-examination, but the report itself, will not be admitted without the sponsoring witness, that can talk about procedure of testing and things like that.
Your Honor, I do want
Well, I'll go further to say that I don't think the fact that this officer or these officers have a crime lab report in their possession makes them the custodian of the record.
I understand the court's ruling. I want to be clear on the record, Your Honor. His statement was, as I recall, there was no evidentiary bag, and I'll ask him about it along with.
All right, I'm gonna give you wide latitude to, y'all. All right, how long we been out? All right, long enough for the jury to come back anyway. All right, show them in. All right, everybody good on the jury? All right, you may cross-examine for the defense. I think. Oh yeah, let's get the chief back. We weren't going to start without you. You remain under the same oath, and you can cross-examine it with you.
Good morning, Chief. How you doing?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Fine. I want to clarify some things. I want to make sure. I gathered that your information that you got initially on this particular case, you said earlier there was a joint effort between UPD and OPD early on, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that would have been shortly after Ms. Lee came to Oxford, is that correct? Came to y'all? Sometime in the 8th, I guess I would say.
I believe Ms. Lee reached out to the university on the 8th.
Okay, all right. And you indicated you still have the exhibit.
Yes, sir.
May I approach you?
You may.
Chief, this representation of the Facebook post that is introduced as State's Exhibit 101, all the content in here as far as post engagements and account center accounts received, all these numbers on here, are those representations that were done at the time of this investigation, or is this something you printed out recently? I'm not talking about the post.
Sure.
But all the information that apparently the likes and things of that nature, that represents what you printed out during your investigation or in preparation to come into court here today?
That was, I believe, a May 2024 printout, or analytics came from that month.
All right. And I want to be sure, all the information that, and I ain't much, I don't even have Twitter, okay? So this 19,875, all this stuff is a record of that Twitter account in May of 2024?
Yes, sir.
All right, it's not in relationship to the July 8th, 2022 date, correct?
I believe, yes, where post engagements are going to be more of your specifics. If we pulled up each individual post, and I'm not sure any of those.
I guess my question is,
The majority of what you're asking is here, found here at the bottom.
Right.
These analytics would have been what was the total touch point from the time we printed that, from the time that post was made to the time we printed it.
notwithstanding that fact, there was a lot of interest shortly after Jay Lee's disappearance, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was a lot of media coverage, and it would be a fair statement that the university student population from the 9th, when it was first reported, even up until now, constantly, as evidenced by this particular exhibit, a lot of activity keeping up with this particular incident locally, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what you stated about the DNA, collection of DNA evidence. Have you reviewed the report that came back from Scales Laboratory?
I don't know that I have seen Scales' report.
All right. But you testified on direct examination that you wouldn't anticipate gathering, and I wrote it down, correct me if I'm wrong, no evidentiary value, because there was a delay in time from July the 8th until somewhere around 2022 before you collected any evidence from Mr. Herrington's apartment. Is that what you testified to?
What was that question?
The question is it your representation that you would not anticipate any samples having any evidentiary value if they were collected from July the 22nd, 24th to 25th, if you were concerned about a crime scene or a potential crime scene, July the 8th, 2022?
All right, you gave me multiple dates, so.
July the 8th is the date that you indicated that Jay Lee came up missing, correct?
Yes, sir.
July the 22nd, Mr. Herrington is arrested, correct?
Yes, sir.
July the 22nd, samples were collected out of his apartment, correct? For purposes of sending off a DNA, saliva, blood, whatever.
Yes,
right?
sir.
You weren't just doing DNA samples for purpose of one thing. You were doing a crime scene investigation, correct?
Correct.
All right. So I think your testimony was that you'd be concerned about there being any evidentiary value because of the 14-day period, right?
Yeah, I think what I said was you have to take into the fact that the results are going to be diminished after time and elements and things that happen.
Are you familiar with the fact that, have you been informed that Scales Laboratory has provided a report representing what their findings were?
Yes, sir.
And did you know that they found evidence of value in Jimmie Herrington's apartment, DNA profiles at his apartment that was collected 14 days from the time from July the 8th? Did you know that before you testified here today?
That they found?
Yeah.
If you have something, I'd love to look at it.
Sure. You haven't looked at the report?
Sir, there's thousands of reports. I'd like to see the one you're referencing.
Okay, I'll have to find out what exhibit number it is.
You're probably looking at 103.
said you hadn't seen the report, but I'm gonna tell you what they provided. ID is State's Exhibit 103. I don't expect that you're gonna be to testify that you've ever reviewed it. You ever seen that report before?
I don't believe so.
May I sit down? States is- I don't have-
D-103. You never seen a report before?
I don't know if I saw it. I've seen it.
Well, how is it that you can come in here and testify, Chief? I'm just curious, and I'm not gonna be argumentative with you. But you wouldn't expect to have any DNA profiles of evidentiary value in this case. If you have it,
Your Honor, object to the form of the question. That's a mischaracterization of the testimony of the witness. To say that he asked,
Y'all may have noticed I forgot to put the hearing aids in this morning. I spent a lot of time looking like Dumbo. Go ahead.
the question was, putting words in the witness's mouth as if he said he would expect to find no evidentiary value. That was not the testimony of this witness. It's an improper question.
I'll rephrase it.
There you
Your Honor.
go.
I
That
thought
makes
that's
it
what
easy.
you testified to. Chief, and again, I'm not trying to be argumentative. Would you go to page 10 of the exhibit
Okay.
and read read the bottom where it says conclusion. Just read it, please.
Your Honor,
I'm not,
I don't know if he's saying read it out loud.
Just read it to yourself, I'm sorry.
Read it out loud.
Okay, that's,
Did not object.
all right, we read it to yourself right now.
You had the opportunity to read it, Chief.
Yes, sir.
I go to the next page, page 11, and I certainly don't expect you to understand some of the terms in here, but because it takes a while to read this report, but go to number 10. You don't have to really look at number 9. Read number 10 on the report. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The DNA profile identified in number 10 indicated that it came from the interior back cargo door swab, correct?
Yes, sir.
Item 001T2, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Item 10,
Objection is, 10.
Chief, correct me if I'm wrong. Item 10 indicates that the partial male DNA profile obtained from the interior back cargo door swab and item 00T2 do not match Jimmie Herrington's DNA profile.
Objection to.
Correct?
What vehicle are we talking about?
I'm fixing to get to that when I get done with
And
the
Your Honor, I
report.
don't think we're there yet. He's asked the witness to review the document, and then he's gone straight into testifying on the document says.
I'm gonna let him ask.
You should ask if you should.
He opened this up on cross.
He has been tendered in this case, court feels, as somebody to sum up the evidence anyway. And if you're gonna sum up the evidence, you gotta take cross-examination on the evidence.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. It says the partial DNA profiles obtained from the interior back cargo door swab and item 001T2 do not match Jimmie Herrington's DNA profile or the major contributor DNA profile obtained from Jimmy Lee's toothbrush. Is that what it says?
That is what it says.
All right, now, I could go down every one of these items if need be. Just flip through the page. 11, 12, and page 13. Tell the court how many items are at the conclusion of the list on page 13 of 13. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's 35 items listed in this report, correct?
There are 35 numbers. I've never seen a document like this before, so I don't know how it's labeled as far as, are they saying this is sample 1, sample 2?
35.
I do see 35 on there.
35 items that the Scales Laboratory gave conclusions on as to some type of testing, apparently in this report, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you'll look at item number 35. It indicates, already in the evidence in this trial, that hair was collected from the t-shirt. These hairs were not examined, however, they can be examined upon request, correct?
Yes, sir.
34, read that if you would, please, to yourself. You had the opportunity to read it?
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the location of these items that were identified in 34, but it appears to me in this report, as reported by George Shiro, that those items were not examined. The black Ford Fusion keys, card, driver's license, and receipts.
Objection, Your Honor, it's a mischaracterization. It's not proof.
What's in the report?
It's in, I'm reading the report, that it was not examined and could be examined upon request. We've already had testimony about it. Your Honor.
I think we've heard testimony that, I think we can say that the keys from the Ford vehicle.
Those items, according to this report, could be examined upon request, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you make the decision, or did someone under your direction make any representations not to test those items?
No, sir. It was our understanding that everything was going to be tested. I got a bill for $30,000 that what we sent was to be tested.
But it's a fair representation that those items were not tested, correct?
Correct.
All right. I want you to go to item number item number 24 on the list, if you would, please.
Are you still under conclusions?
Yes, that's all, we're sticking to conclusions. That's all we're gonna talk about.
Okay.
Read that pertains to the sweatpants. As far as the stain on the sweatpants, just giving examples that there were DNA items sent to the lab, came back with results. Read that for me, please, as to the sweatpants. Have you had a chance to read it to yourself?
Working through it. Okay.
And it appears to indicate that there were 3 DNA profiles on the sweatpants stain from Mr. Herrington's apartment, that Timmy Herrington can't be excluded, but Jay Lee was excluded, right?
Sir, I've never seen this. I don't understand how to truly interpret this. I've never did an analysis of DNA
Because
from.
have you had an opportunity to read it?
Yeah, I am, but it is very confusing.
Okay. I guess my question is, Chief, your previous testimony that you wouldn't expect to find any DNA profiles from the 14-day delay is not represented in this report.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
What I said was time, manner, circumstances diminished. I never said it was a 0.
Okay. Well, in this instance, the report indicates that they were successful in providing DNA profiles and a report in this particular case, right?
Ask an answer. He said he can't read the report, can't offer any conclusions based on the report.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Have you had any information provided to you by Detective Baker after he's reviewed the report that Jay Lee's DNA, saliva, hair, urine, or any trace evidence showed anything whatsoever that it wasn't where it was supposed to be, and that Mr. Harris's DNA where it was supposed to be? Has anything been reported to you as far as any crime lab report that there's any trace evidence at all, trace evidence at all, implicating my client in anything whatsoever pertaining to the investigation of this case? Trace evidence. I'm not talking about the videos or whatever. I'm talking about trace evidence, Chief.
No, sir.
And it's a fair statement that y'all got a 13-page report back pertaining to everything that was recovered, right?
Yes, sir.
You indicated previously that you met regularly with the officers on this case. Y'all make decisions on a regular basis, right?
Yes, sir.
Had 27 agencies, according to your testimony, involved in this investigation. Is that a fair statement?
No, sir. I said 27 law enforcement personnel that I saw on a regular basis, not agencies.
I'm sorry, but were you aware of the content of the statements of any of those persons of interest as it related to this case?
We would debrief, yes, sir.
All right. Now, a person of interest, Chief, is not necessarily somebody that's a suspect. Is it? A person of interest includes somebody that may have information, right?
Yes,
that
sir.
leads to a suspect, right?
A person of interest could come in from like a tip or anything that someone said, hey, you need to go talk to this person. That's interesting to us. We would look at that as a person of interest.
Were you informed that individuals that had come in contact with J. Lee were giving deceptive information about their connection to him. I'm not talking about whether or not they were later eliminated as a suspect. Was your investigation impeded by virtue of the fact that certain people weren't being as cooperative early on as you felt like they should be?
No, sir.
At all?
If people were not cooperating with us? No, sir.
Well, can you explain why in McGuire's report, it states in the report that certain individuals are being quote-unquote deceptive about their connection to J. Lee. These are some of his friends. Can you explain to me why, or was it reported to you that those individuals were being deceptive and providing false information?
So Shayla McGuire doesn't work for the city of Oxford. So if she filed something, it would be with the university. If you have something that she has, I'll be happy to look at it, but she works for the university police.
I understand that, but y'all were working together, it's a joint effort. Did you have any information that individuals that were reporting to UPD and OPD investigators weren't being completely honest about their relationship with J. Lee?
No, sir. I mean, I don't understand what you're asking. Shayla McGuire, again, doesn't work for us, so if she has something.
Any information?
Everyone that we met with, we didn't have anybody that did interview with us.
Okay. Are you familiar with the fact that Detective Baker had conversations with individuals with UPD involved in an investigation and interviews together with certain individuals?
I'm sure I'm sure we've met with different people. I don't know who all Detective Baker met with.
What reports have you reviewed in this particular case from your agency? I'm just asking, Chief.
Mostly our reports.
You haven't reviewed any of the UPD reports?
No, sir. That would have went through their chain of command.
Now, the report that you have, I believe it's a 133-page report, correct? Something like that. Have you reviewed that?
No, sir. Not all those documents.
All right. Did you review with anybody in your office the interview process or the process of eliminating a point of interest, Mr. Timberland Max? That name you know who that is?
Yes, sir. I've heard his name.
All right. Did you review the interview process by which Mr. Mathis was eliminated as a person of interest?
I did not watch that interview. No, sir.
All right. Have you reviewed any reports by which Mr. Mathis was eliminated as a person of interest?
No, sir. I believe I met with our team. Again, we would do daily updates. And so if we did anything, it would be a meeting together.
Okay. Were you informed that Mr. Mathis was being deceptive during the course of his interview?
No, sir.
And what about any conversations or interviews with Jose Reyes or Jamie Towns, which is J. Lee's roommate? He's a person of interest just because he's a roommate, correct? Y'all interviewed him, right?
That name sounds familiar.
Okay. And Jamie Towns, another Khalid Fears. You're familiar with the interview with Khalid Fears, right?
I know we talked to Jose Reyes. I know Fears for sure.
Okay. And as far as Mr. Fears' statement, it appears that he has provided some information pertaining to his relationship or his connection to Mr. Lee that really wasn't 100% true early on in the investigation, right?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. If there's a report that represented that he may not have provided accurate information, you wouldn't have any idea about that.
I would love to see it. I don't have that report.
Now, if you would, tell me, you indicated earlier that the investigation, the reporting process that started between UPD and OPD, that was early on. Y'all were sharing information between each other. Fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And report that you're talking about as far as the press release, do you know whether or not the UPD press release came out before y'all's?
The first one?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it would have had to because we shared it.
Okay. Were you familiar with the fact that Mr. Mathis provided information to the investigators that he knew that the report came out the day before the report actually came out? Did that come to your attention at all?
No, sir. Again, if you're referencing a report, I'd love to read it.
I got you. But it's not a report that you haven't read the entire file of the UPD file, correct?
No, sir.
Or the OPD file?
Not from start to finish.
Okay. When's the last time you reviewed a report of the OPD file?
I mean, as we do trial prep, I'm looking through notes, but I'm not going
Not
from
looking at the report.
the entirety.
Is it important to provide every time an officer does something as far as an investigation on a particular case, to whether or not they're interviewing a witness, they would keep up with that, place it in a report? Is that important?
If they're interviewing someone?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We make reports.
And the information that you provided on direct examination pertaining to the searches, I believe those searches were conducted on November the 7th, 2024, the most recent searches, I believe at Lafayette Place here in Oxford, also in Grenada at Lincoln, on Lincoln Road, and somewhere, quote unquote, in a wooded area on Perry Road in Grenada County, November the 7th. Is that when those things occurred?
I don't believe Lafayette Place was November the 7th. I believe that may have been in September.
What date was it?
I believe in September of this year.
All right, September this year.
Yes, sir.
It was September this year, but the most recent searches in Grenada County were on Lincoln Road and Perry Road, November the 7th of this year, right?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to the jury, the court, and myself, and even the DA, why that was not reduced to writing, placed in any report?
Sure. So Lincoln Road and the area around Perry Road had already been searched previously. We had already been there. Nothing changed in November of 2024. It's very similar to us. We get calls all the time about a crime or an event that has happened. We show up and there's nothing there. And we call it HBO. It's handled by officer. We reported everything that we've done on Perry and Lincoln Road. There was nothing new, nothing of evidentiary value that we used. There was nothing to add to that report. That's why there's not a report.
Well, Chief, there's a lot of other reports in your file that indicate nothing of evidentiary value was found prior to these last two searches that have reports in. My question is not whether or not you didn't find anything of evidentiary value. Why did you not file a report that you didn't find anything of evidentiary value on those particular searches?
Because we had already previously searched those locations, nothing changed. There was nothing to add to that original search.
So that's why you didn't file a report?
On November the 24th
On November the 7th.
of 2024,
That's correct. In the September date.
yes, sir. We've already searched those locations.
Are there any other report? Did you authorize or direct them not to file a report, Chief, or they did that on their own?
No, sir. It's again, like I said, it's standard practice. We get a call about a careless driver on XYZ location. We go to that location. If we don't find anything, there is nothing to report. We go back 10-8 HBO.
Chief, you indicated that you wouldn't report anything since there was anything of value, but you would have reported something on the November 7th report if you had found something of value.
Yes,
Correct?
sir.
You agree with me, do you not? By you not finding anything of value is something that may be valuable to a defendant.
I'm not understanding your question.
Well, you think it may be valuable that if you've received information to go search a place, regardless you had already searched it before or not, may be valuable to a criminal defendant to know that you went back down there or went down there the first time.
And again, I think we reported that. That information was shared.
Of the November the 7th, 2024 search?
We spoke with the DA's office on that. We shared information.
Well, can you explain to me,
According to the officer's testimony, I just
testified the first time that we heard about it was 2 weeks ago yesterday on a question that I asked an officer whether or not there'd been a Grenada and Lafayette Place for searches. First time it was ever revealed was in a court of law. How can you explain that, Chief?
All I can tell you is we went there to search. We didn't find anything. There was nothing to report.
So,
let's talk about some other evidence in this case.
if there's evidence that an officer has gathered, retrieved it, evaluated it, and personally has determined that it's unreliable, should that be placed in a report?
That officer collected?
Collected evidence, let's say from a search warrant. Collected evidence from a search warrant, got it, looked at it, and he talked to somebody or made a determination, even if the investigation revealed that it was unreliable. Should he put that in a report?
You're asking me a hypothetical?
I'm asking you as the chief of police for Oxford Police Department, if one of your officers gathers evidence,
And he logged that evidence. He logged it as evidence.
I've got a copy of it, that they got it.
But that's a
Logged
report
that
then, right?
evidence. Should he report that he gathered that evidence?
You said you have a copy of it.
My point is, I'm asking you, should he report, if he makes the determination that that evidence is unreliable, should he put that in a report, just like a statement from somebody? You take a statement from somebody, put in a report if you think someone's being deceptive, right, or dishonest, right? You put that in a report. You evaluate that person's statement.
That sounds like someone's opinion. That doesn't sound like evidence. You're changing up on me. You're saying they gathered something, and now you're saying they perceived something. That's different. So perception may not go in a
Well, if you had
report.
an officer, one of your officers testify under oath that they gathered evidence, reviewed it, in their opinion, after talking to other people, it was unreliable, shouldn't they put that in a report, that they determined, that they gathered it, and they determined that it was unreliable?
And our officer put that in a report, is what you're saying.
No. If he didn't, would he have done something against your policy? He gathered the evidence, Chief. He took it. He looked at it. He determined, in his opinion, that it was unreliable. Should he report that he gathered it, that he evaluated it, and that he determined that it was unreliable, Chief? It's a simple question.
It's really not. If we're out on a search, and again, all of these locations, we ran across all kinds of things on the search. You may look at it, I may see a AA battery is that a part? I find it, evaluate it. Do I need to log that? Do I need to keep that? No. You move on. I'm not going to write every time I saw someone's cigarette on the ground or whatever we may have found in the woods. Yes, you have to evaluate what you see, but I'm not going to put everything that I came in contact if it was not pertinent to the investigation.
Hang on.
The objection to the question is that it ultimately, it goes to the credibility and weight of the evidence, provenance of the jury on each individual piece of evidence. And the chief has already answered the question too, as far as policy.
If you've got a more specific question you'd like to, if you got a more specific question you want to ask the witness, ask it. If you don't, move on.
Chief, if you execute the search warrant on the residence, Jimmie Herrington, on July the 22nd, his property, inside his apartment, and the resident key lock audit for his apartment. Executed search warrants for all three of those. If you got returns on all three of those, right? Shouldn't an officer provide a report about the return on those search warrants?
Whatever we collect, we put in the return.
Okay. Now, once he evaluated that evidence, in his opinion, if he decided the lock audit's not reliable, or we messed up on the computer that was seized from Mr. Harrington's apartment, or if we opened the door too early on his car before the execution of the search warrant, those items should be listed in a report as to how he conducted his investigation, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. What's the
Objection.
confusing question, compound question?
I think it's a reasonable question for cross-examination.
So you asked multiple questions.
I asked one question.
No, she asked
Give me
multiple
enough
questions.
information to answer the question.
You asked multiple questions. You said, should an officer put evidentiary, so if I get something, should I put it in there? You also said, should they talk about when they opened a car door or when they pulled? Those are all different things. They're not going to timestamp when I opened a car door. There's other mechanisms of evidence that they use for that, for cameras or video.
Information question, Chief. I laid out some stuff so I think you understand. Executed a search warrant on July the 22nd, 2022, pertaining to evidence collected on that day, the same day that Mr. Herrington was arrested. That evidence was collected and logged, placed in evidence, and examined. If anything that was collected that day, whatever it was, piece of evidence was collected, and an officer drew an opinion at any point in time about the veracity of it or any of the problems with the evidence, shouldn't that be placed in a report? Yes or no?
I can't speak on his opinion. I can't make an opinion assessment of should he write that in his report. That officer has to say.
I'll move on, Your Honor.
Well, either ask a specific question about a specific item or move on.
The lock audit that was provided as a return on the search warrant on July the 22nd. Are you familiar with the lock audit?
Yes.
All right. Are you familiar with the fact that the lock audit search was executed and a return was provided to the Oxford Police Department?
I've not seen that. I know we asked for the lock audit.
If there was a search of the lock audit and a return done on the lock audit, should there have been a report by the officer that did that particular return on the lock audit?
Sounds like we did. We filed for it and we returned it. We
Yes.
filed for it, yes. We filed for it and we returned it. That's the report.
After the officer that got it, Detective Baker got it, and assessed the lock audit, if he did any further investigation on that particular lock audit, resident lock audit, any further investigation on it at all, should it be placed in a report?
Based off the information he got on the lock audit, he should file what he knows on the lock audit.
Correct. And that's consistent with any other part of the investigation for Oxford Police Department, correct? You gathered information, got that information, if you provided evidence, you gathered evidence, if there's anything about that evidence that's remarkable, it should be placed in a report, right?
Anything that we are using as evidentiary value, we file.
Chief, I want to go over a little bit of the testimony that you stated on direct examination. Have you, to the extent that you know about conversations between Jay Lee and Jimmie Herrington prior to July the 8th of 2022, have you reviewed any of the text messages, Instagram?
No, sir.
You haven't reviewed any of that?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed the Snapchat conversations between Jay Lee and other individuals prior to July the 8th, 2022?
No, sir.
Have you reviewed any of Jay Lee's Snapchat, or any other platform, social platform of Jay Lee prior to July the 8th, 2022?
No, sir.
So what I'm assuming, your direct testimony about conversations that they had, things of that nature, or things that reported to you either through officers or stuff that you had read in the report as to what occurred that evening, correct?
On July 8th,
Conversations July 8th,
I've seen the July 8th conversations. You asked what I saw prior to July 8th.
July or prior to July the 8th.
I've not seen anything prior to July 8th that I've reviewed.
So you can't represent to this jury that there's anything in any report, any conversations between Jay Lee and Jimmie Herrington where Jimmie Herrington had coached Jay Lee over to his apartment before, threatened him in any way, or anything like that, can you?
On July 8th,
July 8th, before July 8th, you haven't reviewed any of the text messages or conversations before July the 8th.
no, sir.
And on July the 8th, you represented that you had read all those text messages, Instagram. Is that in a report that was provided to you, but are you actually reviewed the return on the search warrants? Which one is it, Chief?
I've seen some of the Snapchat logs and then our reports.
And do you see anything in there that Jay Lee had threatened my client, that he was going to quote unquote out him at all?
At 4:36, Jay Lee states, I just wanted to say, which is outing, that I had you on the DL again, which is the download. Fun to have been your first guy experience. Jay Lee says, I wanted to say. He wanted to out him.
He wanted to out him? Is that what you say that means?
He says, I just wanted to say. Say is a verbal word.
But your indication is, your testimony here today is that that's an indication that Jay Lee was going to out Jimmie Herrington.
It says, I wanted to say it. He wanted to say that Tim was on the download.
Say it to other people?
Just says say it.
Okay. Do you have any indications, any reports from any officers, whether it be Detective Baker or anyone else, that there's anything in their investigation that revealed that there had been any outing conversations between Jay Lee and Jimmie Herrington prior to July the 8th?
Nothing prior to July the 8th.
Do you have any, have you reviewed any of the other social media platforms from Mr. Lee's Snapchat account?
Snapchat's one account, one platform.
Excuse me, Jay Lee's other accounts other than Snapchat.
I've looked at a lot of messages, so I don't know what all, if they were Googles or, I've just seen kind of a series.
Okay. Do you find anything in those Snapchat accounts that is consistent with the same type of conversations that you have in the July 8th Snapchat conversations between Jay Lee and Timmy Herrington? Late at night, things of that nature, and going over to other people's residence unannounced, things of that nature.
Did we find that in other, I'm not sure, I didn't go through his
You
account.
don't recall?
I didn't go through his account past July the 8th, or prior to July the 8th.
I want to hand you what's remarked. Did you review all the way back to June the 14th pertaining to Jay Lee's Snapchat account with Mr. Fears? Have you looked at those?
No, sir, never seen that.
Never looked at it?
No, sir.
All right, thanks. Before we go.
That's all that.
You may redirect. Y'all good? All right.
You were asked on cross-examination about the message from Jay Lee to Tim Herrington. I just wanted to say I had you again on the download. What did Jay Lee do after that comment was made?
He responds one more time and says, "I've nutted in your floor, so you should clean that up, by the way." And and the nude was fake. Okay, back to block now.
All right, back to block now. So, was there any actions based on the records that Tim Herrington took that would indicate how Tim Herrington understood the message from Jay Lee? I wanted to say I had you on the download.
Can you reframe the question?
Based on that, what happened after that? Can you make any observations on how Tim Herrington understood what Jay Lee was saying as far as outing him to other people?
When Jay Lee makes that statement, then Tim gets a notification that he's been blocked on Instagram. Jay Lee then receives a Snapchat from this alternate account, Red Eye 24. There was kind of an immediate prompting at that point.
And who's trying to reinitiate contact in this?
Tim Herrington.
Okay. That's all I have now.
State calls the next witness.
John, at this time, stay with us.
All right. Y'all approach 1 second. Gentlemen, jury, you've heard from the state that they've pressed on their case in chief, so you've heard the testimony that the state has offered. There's some things that the court has to do at this point. I'm going to give you a long lunch today until 1:30. When we get back at 1:30, the state will finish that right to call witnesses like this, and will not call witnesses, whichever one it wants to do, okay? All right? Remember the court's instructions, don't talk about the case, don't allow anyone to talk about the case with you, don't form or express any opinions, don't investigate the case, steer clear of any media reports on this matter, and have a good lunch. Is this witness finally excused? Oh, that's right. Okay, you, Chief, you can't be in the courtroom just that. Y'all have information, y'all get him back if you need him, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, go back to work.
Thank you.
All right.